The mystery of Lisów, how invincible German Tigers met their end at the hands of Ural tankers. Folks, before we dive into this detective story from the distant 1945, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. And at the end, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, why do you think these myths last so long? This story is a real eye-opener. Picture a cold, grim morning on the 13th of January, 1945. The war is breathing down Germany's neck, and Soviet forces are storming westward. In the chaos of retreat and desperate last-ditch counterattacks, legends are born, or more often myths. Today, we're busting one of the most persistent ones, the myth of how the elite German 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, armed with monstrous King Tiger tanks, supposedly walked into a brilliant trap and, heroically perishing, wiped out 50 or 60 Soviet heavy IS-2 tanks. Sounds epic, right? Almost like a Hollywood blockbuster script. But the truth, as it often is, turned out to be much simpler, more brutal, and far less flattering for the storytellers. Meet the main narrator of our story, the 501st Heavy Tank Battalion, Schwer Panzerabteilung von Fundertines, the elite of the Wehrmacht. In the summer of 1944, they were among the first to receive the newest monsters, the Tiger II tank, also known as the King Tiger. Imagine a 70-ton steel beast with a gun that could punch through any Allied tank's armor from over a mile away. This wasn't just a tank, it was a symbol of former might, a last hope to turn the tide. And their baptism by fire near the town of Obeldau in August 1944 was a failure. The battalion took losses, and its commander, Oberstleutnant von Legat, was promptly relieved of his command. The new commander was Major Samish. This fact alone makes you think, were these super tanks really so invincible? By January 1945, after reorganizations and even a number change, it became the 424th Battalion, but often still appeared in documents under its old name. It had 51 tanks in its ranks, a mix of older Tiger ones and the new King Tigers. And on the 13th of January, near the Polish village of Lisów, this fist was poised to strike the Soviet troops. Now, for the official German version, which you can find in book after book, including the authoritative work by Wolfgang Schneider, Tigers in Combat. It claims the 501st Battalion walked into a cunning ambush. Heavy IS-2 tanks and camouflaged anti-tank guns allegedly fired on them from hiding spots. In a fierce battle, the battalion was almost completely destroyed, but before dying, the tankers performed a heroic feat by knocking out 50 to 60 Soviet machines. This version, like a virus, spread to Russian-language books too, like those by Ilya Moshchansky. And now stop. Let's switch to investigation mode. What really happened? Let's turn to documents stored not in memoirs, but in archives. And here's where it gets fascinating. The combat order from the commander of the 61st Guards Tank Brigade of the 10th Guards Ural Volunteer Tank Corps, Guards Colonel Zhukov, from that fateful 13th of January. And it reveals a shocking fact. There were no IS-2 tanks anywhere near Lisów. None. And there was no anti-tank artillery there either. The legendary ambush described by the German tankers simply never existed. So, who did the fearsome Tigers and King Tigers actually face? They faced just 2 battalions of T-34-85 tanks from that very same 61st Guards Tank Brigade. 40 tanks. And 2 companies of motorized infantry riding on the armor of those T-34s as an assault force. Those are the only forces. 40 medium tanks against 51 heavy monsters. On paper, the odds looked more than grim for the Soviet side. So what had happened? Here's the real story. Early in the morning, the Soviet tankers and their nimble and fast T-34-85s burst into Lisów on the move. The attack was so sudden and stunning that the German garrison fled in panic, abandoning equipment and even leaving behind their own captured artillery regiment commander. Only later, having recovered, did the Germans launch counterattacks. Powerful counterattacks, 12 of them in one day. Up to 60 tanks took part in the attacks. It seems other units joined the 501st Battalion, supported by artillery, rocket launchers, and an infantry regiment. Imagine the scene. The streets of a small Polish village, clogged with burning buildings and vehicles. The roar of guns, the screech of tracks, and our tankers skillfully maneuvering, using smoke and fires as cover, blasting the mighty but clumsy Tigers at point-blank range from the flanks. The battle lasted all day. By 8 p.m., having suffered heavy losses, the Germans retreated. Through incredible effort and skill, the Ural tankers held Lisów. The price of victory was high. The brigade commander, Guards Colonel Zhukov, was killed. But the commander of the 501st Battalion, Major Samish, was also killed in that same battle. The score on the battlefield was absolutely not in favor of the Baron Munchausens. And what about the losses? This is where the arithmetic becomes devastating for the German version. Losses of the 61st Guards Tank Brigade. For T-34-85 tanks burned out irrecoverably. Another 10 were damaged, but by the next morning, most had been repaired and returned to service. Total, for irrecoverable losses versus the claimed 50 or 60 destroyed tanks. German losses confirmed, meaning what they couldn't evacuate from the battlefield: 5 King Tigers, 6 Tiger Ones, 5 Panthers, and 2 self-propelled guns. And that's just what was left on territory held by Soviet troops. The bottom line that makes you think. So, the myth was born, not out of pure evil intent, but out of desperation, a desire to sugarcoat the bitter truth about how a technically superior enemy was beaten by skill, ingenuity, and courage. In their reports, the German tankers transformed 40 T-34s into several regiments of heavy IS-2s, and their crushing tactical defeat into a heroic last stand. What can you say to that? Baron Munchausen, the famous storyteller, looks like a modest man compared to them. He really can just sit back and nervously smoke his pipe on the sidelines. And for us, it's a lesson to remember. History is written not only by the victors, but also by the defeated, who are very keen to look better than they actually were. So folks, see how the deception unravels? The truth, as you can see, ended up being grander than any fiction. If you found this as fascinating as I did when I was digging through the documents, make sure to subscribe and like this video. And most importantly, drop a comment below. Why do you think such myths are so persistent? Have you encountered other examples of military tall tales? Let's discuss. Your opinion matters.